What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show presented by NBC. I'm Dan Titus, joined with Raphielle Johnson and Noah Rubin. We're into week 5, and the Sixers are imploding in front of all of our faces. I'm not going to talk about it, at least not yet. We actually did have the Cleveland Cavaliers go down 15-0. They lost to the Boston Celtics in TD Garden on Tuesday night in the Emirates NBA Cup. It actually looked like Tatum was just putting his stamp on that MVP. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers wound up making that late game comeback. But ultimately, the Boston Celtics reigned supreme. But yeah, since this is an interesting point in the schedule, there's a couple of back-to-backs. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, after going hard in Boston, they are not going to be playing some of their best players. Cleveland's been phenomenal from a fantasy perspective this year. They have top 4 players in the top 40. But Noah, I want to talk about who might see a nice little boost here with Darius Garland being ruled out on Wednesday with groin soreness. Groin soreness, that's what they're calling it. I think it looks more like rest. But also, Karis LeVert is going to miss another game. So is this a point in time where you can maybe stream someone like Ty Jerome?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. And before I talk about Ty Jerome, I think it's worth noting that, Cleveland lost for the first time this season last night, but it was in Boston by 3. And Darius Garland had the worst game of the year. 3 for 21 is just, it's not even badly. It's horrendous, atrocious, whatever adjective you want to use. And they still only lost by 3. And then also the other wing guys that were out for that game that are going to be out again tonight. So nothing to be upset about if you're Cleveland, even though you aren't going 82-0 now. 81-1 is still in play, I guess. But yeah, Ty Jerome is a guy that's been playing pretty well this season and in a reserve role. Like his 9-cap value looks a lot better than his actual impact. But he's been playing very well, and he played an expanded role in the game last night. Helped them win, and with Garland out and Sam Merrill, both who obviously started last night. Sam Merrill being out isn't really altering any fantasy lineups, but it opens up another starting spot for somebody. So Ty Jerome will definitely fill one of those. And yeah, I already picked him up in the one league that he was available in just to stream him tonight.
Anyone else you see value in, Raph, or is this something like you may just choose a different situation because there are a lot of players on injury reports across the league?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked him first because I was going to paraphrase Erykah Badu in talking about Ty Jerome. But yeah, if you're not going to be able to call on him, you kind of have to consider Craig Porter Jr. in really deep leagues. So yeah, I'd like to say Jalen Tyson if you're really desperate, but I don't think he's going to play enough. He hasn't played enough recently. Maybe there's a chance for it tonight, but I don't think you can count on that. So I would say Jerome, maybe Porter. Then after that, you're just kind of looking at other teams to see if you can find value elsewhere.
Yeah, I like that. Call Jerome.
Call Ty Jerome, man.
I like that. One guy that has been getting the call, though, Dalton Knecht. My God, this dude went for a career-high 37 points last night against the Utah Jazz, subbing in for Rui Hachimura. And at this point, Raph, I mean, Dalton Knecht is rostered in 41% of leagues, so at least 41% of managers smartened up and picked up Dalton Knecht. I wish I had him higher on my prioritization list of my waiver column this week, but I just didn't know if Rui was coming back. But Knecht's been 13th in per game value over his last 4 games per Basketball Monster. Is this someone that has staying power regardless of whether Rui Hachimura comes back?
I think he does because he adds a dynamic with the shooting ability, and he can do some off the bounce as well. That this rotation really didn't have outside of LeBron and AD. So I think he's going to have value. Maybe as a 6-man once Rui returns, because I don't know if they can take Cam Reddish out of the starting lineup. Not so much for offense, but his defense. So Knecht, if he plays 6-man, he's still going to be mid to high 20s in minutes. And I think that's more than enough time for him to provide value to fantasy managers.
Yeah, and Noah, like I can't help but notice that it seems like JJ Redick continues to just scheme for Dalton Knecht. I mean, if you look at the assist distribution, LeBron's got 12 to him. Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell both have 10 to him. So, like, clearly there's an emphasis on trying to get this guy open looks in the half court. Something tells me he's sees a bit of himself in Dalton Knecht, just a way more athletic and defensive capable version of himself. But I can't help but notice, but LeBron James continues to laud his him being a Dalton Knecht's just, being unheralded and being overlooked in the draft and all this. This has to have some kind of value, right? Like outside of the numbers, this guy, I think it seems like he is someone that's going to stick into this lineup regardless of what happens here.
Yeah, LeBron apparently has been saying it since last season. He never lies. He's been talking about how good Dalton Knecht is for a really long time. I think he kind of heard about Dalton Knecht for the first time when he was like 12 years old. He knew that guy was going to be able to score 37 last night. But no, I think he's been playing incredibly well. Last few games, the starter in the game before that, and obviously 37 with 9 threes. Like that's excellent for a rookie. It's not going to see many performances like that. It makes me kind of think like, when Rui Hachimura is back, is there a chance that Dalton Knecht is still starting? If, say, I'm not sure exactly the timeline on Hachimura, he comes back for the next game. Do you really bench this guy that just had 37 and 9 threes? And like Raph was talking about, you don't bench Cam Reddish for defense. So it could be a situation where Dalton Knecht is kind of the starter until he just isn't shooting the ball as well. I think it is worth noting that, aside from the points and threes, he's not great in other categories. So it makes me a little bit more hesitant about his impact in 9-cat leagues when he's not hitting, 9 threes or 5 threes a game consistently. But definitely at least some sort of 6-man role. Like he's proven that he deserves the minutes.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that you can confidently stream, especially when Rui Hachimura is out. He seems like he has a day-to-day injury, but we just haven't gotten an update that when he's going to return to the lineup. So if you picked him up in fantasy leagues, continue to ride Dalton Knecht, man. He's definitely hitting. Staying in LA for a second, the Clippers, they've been getting extremely great value out of Norman Powell. I mean, this guy's been one of the best values in fantasy basketball, 54th in 9-cat leagues. He's averaging over 32 fantasy points per game in points leagues, but he has a hamstring injury, and we know how hamstrings are, Raph. Is there anyone that you think could sub in on the short term? Because the Clippers do have a really good schedule in terms of not only this week in week 5, they have 3 games left, but then also looking ahead to week 6, they also play 4 games. So is there anyone that you might pick up in the short term that might have value here?
Not really. I'm not really sure. Like Terrence Mann, I don't see him going back in the starting lineup because I don't think you can have he and Chris Dunn on the floor just because of their scoring limitations. So I don't know if you can have those two together. Maybe Amir Coffey gets in there as a spot starter. He can give you some 3-pointers, but I don't really know. You're not going to find like a like-for-like fancy substitute, so to speak, with Norman Powell, who I should note is out on his own bobblehead night. So that's a pretty rough
lame
turn of events, So yeah. But yeah, I don't really know like if there's anyone that you can specifically go at. Like Kevin Porter Jr., that's like a serious gamble that I don't think many fantasy managers will want to take either.
Yeah, where do you stand on that, Noah? Is this someone that are you going to look another direction, or do you think you could pick up Chris Dunn, Kevin Porter Jr., Amir Coffey, any of those names kind of pique your interest?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly interested in any of them. I think if I were to choose, it would be Amir Coffey, or I mean, I guess Chris Dunn is still starting, so he would have probably some more minutes than what he's been seeing pretty consistently. So there is some value there, but I think I'd rather look at other teams just because, like Raph said, like Norm Powell has been playing the best basketball of his career. And it's not like some of these guys are going to step in, just immediately give you what he was giving or their own version of that. So no, I think I'd rather look at a different team other than the Clippers to stream in here tonight.
Yeah, likewise. I think I'd probably lean towards Chris Dunn for the reason you said. He's starting, can still give you some low end assists, around 4 to 5 assists with 10 points, maybe some stocks. So I think that's pretty much the high end appeal there. So not great. But want to give a shout out to James Harden. He's now 2nd all time in 3-pointers made, passing Ray Allen. Just a really good draft class that I don't think anyone talks about enough. 2009 draft class, him, Steph leading the way. Fun fact, who was rookie of the year that year? Do you guys remember?
Tyreek Evans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. No, it was quick on
I had a jersey in 5th grade. I had a Tyreek Evans jersey. I was the only one in school with one. Yeah.
Wow, that's dope. Shout to Philly and the Memphis grad. Actually, I don't even know if he graduated, but really was a good player for his time, man. Ahead of the curve. Luka Doncic is back. The Dallas Mavericks handled the Pelicans with ease on Tuesday night in the Emirates Cup. Noah, is there anyone that you think is it worth, now that Luka's back, is there anyone from the Dallas Mavericks that you're particularly interested in at least in streaming? Like Najee Marshall has been playing pretty well. Quentin Grimes is starting to feel out his role a little bit more, but I think really it's now that PJ Washington's back, if he was dropped, I mean, I think that's probably the person you'd probably be most interested in. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on the Mavs and how they're playing right now.
PJ Washington would probably be the one I'm most interested in, but at the same time, I'm not that interested, like more so than I was previously, because he had the one really big game, and it was during the one game that Luka missed. So Luka's back now, and he goes back to 2 of 9 shooting for 4 points. So like he's still PJ Washington, like the defensive numbers should be there, but I'm not expecting much more from him. Quentin Grimes, he started in place of Luka, and he still played, like he's been playing about 20 plus minutes off the bench, good source of threes. That's about it. I just think that the way that Dallas is structured, with, most of the shots being Luka, Kyrie, and Clay, and then a lot of the center minutes being filled by Lively and Gafford, like there's not a ton of other room for value outside of those main guys. Plus, the minutes were a little skewed last night because they won by 40. So,
yeah. How do you, what's your stance on that, Raph? Pretty much the same.
I'm actually less interested in PJ Washington, because, that was the one thing I was watching in that game. All right, how many shots are you going to get? What types of opportunities compared to what happened on Sunday in Oklahoma City? You knew there was going to be a decrease, but I didn't expect 2 for 9 shooting. He's someone you certainly roster just because he's a starter. I guess you can put it that way, but I don't think he's someone that I would be actively seeking out in terms of like your more shallow leagues at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's pretty much an avoid for me. I don't have PJ Washington in many spots. Started Najee Marshall last week because of the schedule, but now that Luka and pretty much the starting unit is healthy, Noah said it best. That's running through Luka, Kyrie, and Clay. So, and then Gafford and Lively can pick up the rebounds and the blocks on the backside. All right, let's talk about the Sixers and their hot mess of an organization. Lacking organizational accountability, leadership, zero chemistry, and now they're out here airing dirty laundry. I don't know who the leak was. There was a little bit of there was some kind of speculation because some of the words that were used by Nick Nurse, elephant in the room, that it could be him being the source of the leak. I think that'd be pretty funny if that was the case. Actually, it'd be horrible if that was the case. But either way, how do you see, Raph, this kind of unfolding for the Sixers? Is this going to be a motivated Joel Embiid we can expect here now that he's been called out by one of the younger players on the team, which is ridiculous to even have to get to this point where you're not being punctual at this stage in your career? But that's where we stand. So how do you feel like Joel Embiid is going to respond from this?
In the perfect world, he would be motivated to come out and dominate. I just don't know if he's physically capable of doing it right now. You look back at that Miami game that prompted the team meeting finally, he didn't look very good in terms of his movements, his fluidity or lack thereof. For a player of his caliber to not attempt a single free throw in the game, I think that's a pretty strong indictment of where he is right now. I think we were talking about this on the Q&A yesterday. Maybe Tyrese Maxey getting that contract is what gave him the strength to kind of stay, you got to turn it up, big fella, because it's a lot easier to say it when you're on that same level financially as opposed to when you're just on your rookie deal. So maybe that kind of sparked something in him. And I think Tyrese is the guy that should kind of be behind moving forward. If Joel fits into that, well, he kind of has to just because of what they're paying him and the role that he has. But I don't know, man. I think he's one of those things. He's like playing through the rust, and he's still not 100%. And if you have him rostered in your fantasy league, this really stinks right now.
Yeah, it definitely stinks. Paul George is just somewhere, I don't know, recording a podcast, I guess, somewhere in the locker room or something. But he hasn't been good either. And this is the worst shooting team in the NBA. They're shooting 43% from the field. I mean, Noah, can Tyrese Maxey come here and save the day? I mean, he's at least going to probably help for fantasy, right? Like, they just need somebody to take the reins and actually have some competency in rhythm in the game. Because as Raph stated, it's bad watching Joel Embiid play basketball right now. he's indecisive. He's slow. He still has this lack of situational awareness, bad turnovers. And Paul George is somewhere doing ISO. He's just doing him like Paul George does. But what do you think of Tyrese Maxey coming back? And he could be coming back as soon as Wednesday, per Shams Charania.
Yeah, I mean, I need him back, and I think I only have him in the one league, but I really do need him back in my lineup. So Lou Williams on the Run It Back show for FanDuel TV. He had a quote this morning where he was talking about Tyrese Maxey confronting Joel Embiid. It got cut off by the camera. Those are my air quotes. I'm trying to get them on there.
Yeah,
he said,
"You gotta do like the mini me."
Well, I did them, and I was like, wait, nobody can see that. It just looks like I'm shrugging my shoulders. I ended up on the phone with a few guys from the 76ers. By all accounts, Tyrese Maxey calling out Joel Embiid was blown out of proportion. They were sitting next to each other when we were on the phone laughing and giggling. So it seems like the way that it was reported and then, kind of social media took it, it was almost like it was like dead silent in the locker room. And Tyrese Maxey said, "This is on you." And like, where it almost seems more like hey, like, you have to be doing these things. It may not have even been like a big call out in front of everyone. Like, so it may not be the dramatic thing that at least I was picturing. But I still think I'm hoping that it's like, okay, like Tyrese Maxey is a leader on this team and he can motivate Joel Embiid. So hopefully he can be better. And then having Maxey out there on the floor. I have a few stats that I had pulled because I'm starting a column on Jared McCain. I know we'll talk about him a little bit later, but Tyrese Maxey and the 76ers, they take a lot of shots off the dribble. So the Sixers are dead last in assists per game this season. They are last in shots taken off 0 dribbles. They are fourth in shots taken with at least 3 to 6 dribbles taken or 7 or more dribbles taken. They are fourth in the league in both of those. And then the number one player in shots taken with at least 7 dribbles before they shoot is Tyrese Maxey at almost 10 per game. So I don't know if it should make things better in the sense that there's more talent out there on the floor, but I'm kind of curious how it's going to work when Tyrese Maxey, a guy that shoots a lot off the dribble, comes in and they're already shooting a lot off the dribble. So I don't know. It's something I'm kind of interested to see exactly if things just get better.
Yeah. And I think that's just speaks to their lack of chemistry. If they're having to rely on dribbling and shooting, there's no ball movement. If you look at the Warriors, this is the top 5 offense and defense, but their offense is humming. They're averaging the most assists per game, fewest dribbles, damn near. So like, it's the other side of the spectrum. I think that the supporting cast, as much as you want to cast blame on Embiid and Paul George and them, Kelly Oubre hasn't been particularly good. Caleb Martin hasn't been great. I mean, Yabusele and Jared McCain have been their best players. So Nick Nurse has to do a better job of putting the right players in the position to succeed. And I don't know. Maxey's certainly going to help. I just don't know that this Sixers team is particularly good. And I don't know. Between them and the Bucks, Raph, there's a distinct chance that we could see, if this goes left, Joel Embiid could probably ask for a trade just as much as Giannis. But I feel like Giannis is probably more likely to. But what do you think in terms, because both of these teams are bad?
Yeah, I don't. I think Milwaukee has a better chance of turning things around. Just those stats that Noah mentioned. Philly's got a lot of guys who really shouldn't be dribbling that much who are being asked to dribble, and they're underutilizing guys. Like people saying, "Well, Eric Gordon's playing poorly." Eric Gordon's a catch and shoot guy. Yeah, like when he's out on the floor, you have to put him in position where he can catch the ball and shoot, whether it's playing off of the pick and roll or a pin, or he gets a pin down or something. Like, I don't know whose fault it is in terms of like one singular person, but I think I have a little more faith in Milwaukee turning things around just because of Dame and Giannis. I'm not going to ask about your guy Glenn, but I feel like Milwaukee's got a better chance of kind of getting things going. We've seen Brook Lopez turn it up a bit recently. I'm not really counting too much on Chris Middleton, but whatever they get from him, you have a better feeling that it will fit within what they're trying to do and what Philadelphia has been trying to do thus far.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think I would agree with that. We'll see where it goes from here. Sixers are 2-11. Got a lot of work to do. Let's talk some buy and sell. Jakob Poeltl has been ridiculous lately. I I think off the strength of it, like, yeah, he's a sell high, but I guess I want to know, Noah, to what point can you get equal return or value, would you say, for Jakob Poeltl based on what you've seen from him from a scoring perspective, rebounding, defensively? I mean, he's playing the best basketball of his career right now, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think some reinforcements could be coming soon.
Yeah, he is playing a lot better than I think most people were expecting him to this season. As far as what you could get for him in a trade, I'd say, whatever somebody's willing to offer, because everybody's going to value players differently. So it's kind of hard to put an exact number of ranking or exact player on him. But as far as like a timeline of how long this can he can keep this up, I think until February. I don't know the exact date this year, but it might be like February 9th ish. Whenever the trade deadline is, because I don't expect him to be in Toronto after that. I don't know where he ends up. Maybe it's the Lakers. They've been, reportedly interested in a center. So maybe they'll throw together the package of like Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, and a 2029 second they've been trying to offer for like years to get whoever they can. So maybe something like that happens and they're able to get Jakob Poeltl in there, and then his production kind of falls off a cliff because the role is very different. The minutes are far more limited, but I think he's a guy that you can rely on for about 2.5 months.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. And the trade deadline Thursday, February 6th. And so now, I mean, that's actually a pretty interesting point, because I was always thinking that like Jonas Valanciunas would be probably one of those trade targets, maybe Clint Capella, but I think Poeltl's opportunity size, I mean, he's averaging 17 points and 12 rebounds and 3 assists. He kind of does seem like a person that would fit really well in the Lakers system. Raph, where do you stand on Poeltl? And is this somebody you'd hold pretty much through the trade deadline and then maybe try to get rid of him as you inch closer to that, knowing that he could be just building up his stock to potentially get dealt?
Yeah, I would hold. Is you're not expecting him to maintain the value that he currently has. I think you're thinking like 7th or 8th round in terms of his pre-draft value. If you get something close to that for the rest of the way, once guys like Scottie Barnes and Kelly Olynyk return, you'll be fine with that. So, yeah, I would hold and let's see how things play out in terms of how Toronto approaches the rest of the season here, because it's not like they have too many bigs on that roster they can truly rely on if they were to put Poeltl down and kind of put him on ice ahead of the trade deadline. So I think he's going to play good minutes until February.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of the lack of reinforcements in the back end of that front court. Kelly Olynyk isn't ready. I think he's starting to practice, but he's still not ready to take contact yet. So that gives you, at least probably a week or so before you get any threat of someone eating into those minutes. So, yeah, I think Jakob Poeltl is definitely someone that you hold on to. And I think it's someone you could also put on a watch list to potentially be traded just by how well he's been played. But sticking to battle on the football, on the football field and the gridiron, Notre Dame continues to march on towards the college football playoff. And this Saturday night, they take on Army at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. NBC and Peacock will lead you up till kickoff, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. So the San Antonio Spurs, unfortunately, have been without their top pick, Victor Wembanyama, for the last couple of games because of a knee injury. Zach Collins has been really good stepping in for him. So, Noah, is this someone that you think has streaming appeal as long as Victor Wembanyama is out?
Yeah, as long as Wemby's out, Zach Collins is going to be a guy that I would be streaming. We've seen what he can do when Wemby's on the floor. The year before Wemby got drafted, he was so good that the final 2 months that Greg Popovich was like, yeah, this guy's going to start at center next season no matter what. And he was the starting center, and with Wemby at power forward to start last season. Obviously, that changed quickly. But when he is the starting center without Wemby there, he has been very good. He can get you a little bit of everything. Hit threes, get defensive stats, passes well for a big. So he's definitely a guy that I'd be streaming. And then Charles Bassey, I think probably more in deeper leagues because he's not as reliable. But he did have 12 points, 8 boards, steal, 2 blocks against the Thunder with no center, but he still did that.
And Raph, staying on the San Antonio Spurs, do you feel like Stephon Castle has found enough production for you to be interested in deeper formats?
Yeah, I believe so. The shooting still isn't where you'd like to see it be. He's at 38% from the field, but he's playing good minutes next to Chris Paul. think played reasonably well last night. Well, he didn't shoot the ball well, but he got 8 assists, 7 turnovers too. So yeah, there are some efficiency issues there, but he's getting the minutes. And I think with a lot of rookies, especially how this particular rookie class was discussed, as long as the minutes are there, that's pretty encouraging, I think.
Yeah. Flipping back to Toronto, I alluded to the fact that they could be getting some help. Scottie Barnes practiced in full on Wednesday, and it looks like he could be a go for Thursday, which is huge impact for fantasy. Raph, who do you think is most impacted between RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, and Jakob Poeltl with the return of Scottie Barnes?
I'm going to say Barrett just because the ball's probably going to be in his hands less from a playmaking standpoint of those three. So I think Grady Dick, you can use a catch and shoot guy. He's got a little bit more in the toolbox than that, but I don't think he'll be as significantly impacted as Barrett will be of those three.
Where do you stand on that, Noah?
Yeah, I would agree with Barrett being the guy that, the usage for him has been very insane. Obviously, Davion Mitchell would probably lose out on some assists as well. Ochai Agbaji moves back to the bench. But I think in terms of the guys that have season-long value in Toronto, I think RJ Barrett is the guy that takes the biggest hit.
Yeah, in Barrett's absence, Grady Dick was averaging 30 minutes anyway. So, I don't think his minutes are really going to change that much. So I think he's someone you could definitely hold if you're looking for someone for points, threes. Didn't really do much for rebounds and assists anyway. But I think to Raph's point, RJ Barrett, he was averaging 6.8 assists with Scottie Barnes off the floor. That is not sustainable. So, yeah, I think we'll see a dip in his usage rate going forward. But I think Jakob Poeltl is probably the safest of the bunch. Was pretty much rebounding at a pretty similar rate with Scottie Barnes on the floor. Might see a little bit less of shot volume, but I think he's still safely a double-doubles guy, and the stocks will still be there. So definitely agree with you guys there. Let's talk about the Pelicans. Willie Green, I guess, is suiting up tonight because who do they have left? CJ McCollum. We got good news from CJ. At least he's practicing in full. He's probably not too far away from returning. And he's taking contact, which is very important. But Trey Murphy Jr. is out. Trey Murphy III is out. Brandon Ingram is out on Wednesday. Yves Missi is out.
He's questionable. Yves Missi is now questionable, but yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's trending towards, I don't know if he's going to play or not. Either way, is there anyone that you guys are particularly interested in picking up? Brandon Boston Jr. is widely rostered right now, so I don't think he's going to be available for you to select from. But is there anyone else that might have some streaming appeal on a Wednesday?
Javonte Green, King Cake Baby if he's eligible, but I don't really know if he's eligible. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like Carlo Makovich got recalled. I'm like, is he actually going to get burned? I don't know.
He played late last night. That game was out of hand, so maybe he gets minutes. But this is crazy how many injuries they've had down there.
Really crazy. The Pelicans signed Elfrid Payton, which, they cut Jalen Noel. I know we talked about him a little bit last week, but he just wasn't good enough that they had to pluck Payton off the streets. But yeah, I think this is pretty much an avoid. I don't know that you can really trust like this. They got blown out by 40 last night. Who knows what that rotation is going to look like? They're probably going to get blown out again. But good news in Boston, as if they needed any more good news after taking down the only undefeated team in the league. Kristaps Porzingis was assigned to the Maine Celtics, their G League affiliate, on Monday, and then was promptly recalled to the Boston Celtics main roster. So it looks like Kristaps Porzingis is right on time and on schedule with his targeted return of around mid to late December. May even be sooner than that. Don't want to put a timetable on it, but it looks like fantasy managers could be getting one of the best big men back. Now, obviously, word of caution, he's going to be on a minute restriction, and it's probably going to take some time to ramp up. But Noah, this is probably really good news if you stash Kristaps Porzingis.
It is. I think the fact that it's a month out from when we were probably expecting him to be back, and there's a chance that it ends up being a little earlier. Like, that's great news. But like you mentioned, the minutes are going to be limited. I'd be very surprised if he plays more than 25 minutes per game for the rest of the season, because there's no reason for him to. And no back-to-backs. probably some other just scheduled rest nights. I think he'll be effective in his limited role. I don't think he's a guy that needs to play 35 minutes a game to be very good. But I think that the limitations are you just have to be aware of them, because he's not going to play a lot, and he's not going to play a lot of games because they're trying to go back to back.
Yeah. Raph, did you stash Porzingis in any spots, or did you take someone that was actually going to provide, reasonable value for you the first 2 months of the season?
I didn't have the chance to. He was someone I was thinking like 9th, maybe even 10th round in terms of your standard league drafts to pick him. But to get him back, that's going to be huge. Even if he only plays 25 minutes, like Noah said, because he can go out there and block you 2 or 3 shots, and within that time span, good percentages, rebounds reasonably well. So yeah, to have him on your team, I don't know if it's going to be like a league winning move, but it'll definitely give managers a boost if they can plug him into the lineups once he returns.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the long-term play. This is, if you're looking playoff contention, something like that, like back half of the season, I think we're going to see, as he ramps up, a better version of Kristaps Porzingis. And to your guys' point of him, even on a minutes restriction, he averaged 1.29 fantasy points per minute last year. So, he's going to make an impact whether he's playing 20 or 25 minutes. Bilal Coulibaly, the Wizards, suffered a concussion. He looks like he's going to be day-to-day. He missed the last game. Is this an opportunity for someone like Keyshawn George? Maybe we keep Bub Carrington around? Raph, where do you stand on the Wizards if Bilal Coulibaly potentially misses any more games outside of Monday?
I would keep the young guys around regardless, just because they're in a clear rebuild. Like those guys are going to play a lot of minutes. Just a matter of whether or not your roster can take a hit from an efficiency standpoint. With talking Keyshawn George, Bub Carrington, any of those, or Alex Sarr, even though obviously he plays a different position. But I would hold on to any of those young guys. Malcolm Brogdon started on Monday. A bit of a surprise since he played on Sunday as well in his first game back, but maybe he's in the mix. I know fantasy managers aren't too thrilled about that, but Brogdon's going to be in the rotation, I would assume, for a little while here, at least until we approach like that trade deadline time, just because I think he could have value to other teams that are contending. Yeah,
and going to, I don't know if you have much more to say about that, Noah. I think the Wizards situation pretty much is what it is with the young guys. Let's go to Indiana for a second, because Myles Turner did sit out on Monday with a calf injury. I don't know. Jarace Walker seems to be an interesting pickup. I think it's definitely for deeper leagues, but I'm sure his dynasty appeal is probably rising too as he gets more minutes. I would trust him probably more than Ben Shepherd, who's just kind of a catch and shoot guy. But yeah, I want to get your take on the Pacers and kind of what they're going through with some of these injuries.
Yeah, the injury report is massive for tonight's game as well. I know Myles Turner's questionable, Ben Shepherd's questionable. I believe Jarace Walker is even questionable now with an illness, so it could be even more players out than their last game. Jarace Walker and I believe it's Enrique Freeman started in their last game, but both of them were not good. And I think it's kind of getting to the point with Walker where we should be a little bit concerned, even from a dynasty perspective. Now, definitely value him higher than Ben Shepherd just because of, the upside. Like Ben Shepherd, like you said, shooter. Jarace Walker could be a lot, but he didn't really play a ton as a rookie. And sure, we can say, okay, the roster was very talented. And now this year he hasn't played a lot. And when he got to start, he didn't really do all that much. And I think it was still like mid-20s for the minutes. So he's not a guy that I'm really looking to stream in like a redraft league, just because I'm not confident that he is ready to produce yet. Maybe I was more excited when I knew he was about to start, but now after seeing a start, I'm not saying he has to be a guy to stream in just because he's starting, because it wasn't very good. But a guy that I would be interested in is Obi Toppin, who was very good off the bench in the game where Jarace Walker started. So I don't know if the lineup looks similar tonight, if Obi Toppin maybe still comes off the bench and just plays more minutes, or if Walker's out, if he gets the start even. So he's a guy that I would be pretty interested in with the amount of injuries they have.
Yeah, I think I'm sticking to a bench guy too on the Pacers, and TJ McConnell. I think he's going to continue to play a lot of minutes, 20 minutes, and he's always one of those per minute guys that just can get you assists, can get you some steals. Last game he rebounded well, had like 7 rebounds. So I think in the midst of all the injuries that they do have, Andrew Nembhard's not ready to play yet. Obviously, Aaron Nesmith is out till December. Is there anyone else, Raph, that you've kind of been looking at or considering for streaming purposes?
Besides Toppin, I think that's about it. Toppin and McConnell. I think Jarris Walker's issue is that they haven't found a position for him. He came in as a 4. During Summer League, they played him exclusively at the 3. That really didn't work out too well. Went into training camp at the 3. They need to figure that out for the benefit of the franchise and his career individually. I think that's been the biggest issue with Jarris Walker, but that's kind of difficult to do when you consider how deep that team is when healthy.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. What do we think about Zach Edey's injury, Raph? He's week to week. Not a good look. Josh Huff didn't really play particularly well in his minutes, but I think Santi Aldama just continues to just be Jay Huff. Someone's hungry. We got to speed this up, y'all. But no, I think Santi Aldama pretty much is stamped as like a hold right now. Just as long as I think Zach Edey's out, I think he's probably going to be the biggest beneficiary. But what's up with Memphis and all these injuries, man? Like, it just seems like they just can't get right.
It's basically Santi Aldama right now. I don't really. Jay Huff, he had his run early in the season, but they were even less healthy than they are now. So I don't really think you can trust him. Brandon Clark, no. Like, he's starting, but he really hasn't provided much in terms of production. More of a buffer for Jaren Jackson Jr. than anything. So I think if you can get Aldama, that's pretty much where I would stop with that roster in terms of fancy pickups with Edey sideline.
Yeah, any differences or of opinion there, Noah?
No, nothing different. Just want to add in that Memphis's rotations are really, really weird.
Another reason for you not to trust much outside of Santi Aldama. Even Jalen Wells has kind of faded a little bit in recent. But speaking of rookies, let's get to the rookie report. Jared McCain's value, Noah. Now that Tyrese Maxey could be returning, do you have some concerns there? Like, are we running out of the sell high opportunity for Jared McCain, or do you think that this is a situation where he can actually withstand some value here and can potentially be one of the top rookies this year in this offense in the rotation?
I'm not too concerned. I think the idea from a lot of people is that, Jared McCain is just taking Tyrese Maxey's role and playing pretty well, and that when Maxey's back, those shots, those touches, they're just not going to be there. And I just don't think that that's like necessarily the case. So when Maxey's played this season, about 76% of his shots have been unassisted. But only with McCain, he's 53.5% of his shots have been assisted. So he's not just sitting there creating his own shot the same way Maxey was. And that percentage has actually gone up as far as to 55% over the last 5 games without Maxey there. So it's not like, again, McCain is just taking the ball and just creating his own shot every time. And I think that's something that he can continue to do when Maxey returns, is get passes thrown to him and hit shots. 86% of his threes have been assisted as well. So, maybe that's what he has to rely on a little bit more, because he kind of moves down the pecking order, but that would still be kind of similar to what he's already doing as far as just hitting catch and shoot threes, spacing the floor. We talked earlier about the Sixers being last in assists per game, but bringing the point guard back, even if he's not a 10 assists per game guy, I think that helps the offense in general, and hopefully can help them improve on that number, because, I haven't compared it to previous seasons yet, but if you're 2-11 and you're last in assists per game, I think something has to change.
Yeah, something definitely has to change. But I don't think that, if you're rostering Jared McCain, I don't know if you're going to be getting these 20 plus point explosions,
sure.
but he's not going away. Like, the Sixers can't afford to not give him minutes. And for how he's played, and to your point, his ability to do catch and shoot, he can also drive the ball. He's been a very crafty and creative player. I mean, he plays with so much pace and control that I can't see him, even if he's not starting, he's going to be their sixth man or still have a prominent role, whether it be in the starting lineup or on in the second unit. And he probably thrives more in that second unit because there's not that much usage to have to cede to other people, especially with, Oubre not playing well, Caleb Martin not playing well, etc. So I think Jared McCain's value is actually pretty solid. You could still probably sell high if Tyrese Maxey isn't ready to return on Wednesday, but if he returns tonight, that window's shut. Raph, want to talk about Donovan Clingan because DeAndre Ayton continues to miss time with a finger injury. It seems like he's still day-to-day because he's not being ruled out days in advance. I think he's doubtful for the next game. He's probably going to return in the imminent future, but do you think it matters? Like, should Donovan Clingan be rostered anyway?
Rostered. And the big reason is the schedule coming up. They've got a Friday, Saturday back-to-back in Houston. So even if Ayton is back, you have to assume he may not play one of those games. Same with Robert Williams. So you may get at least one more game this week in which Clingan's allowed to just run wild by himself as the starting center. And I like what I've seen from him. The block shots and the efficiency in terms of scoring, that's really good value that you're going to get from him. And you may take a hit in the short term once all three centers are available. But again, the schedule and the fact that Portland's in a clear rebuild, I think the minutes aren't going to be too much of a concern once we hit January.
Yeah, and Noah, where do you stand on Robert Williams? Is he someone that you're still holding on to? Obviously Clingan's been playing well, but we still don't know what's up with DeAndre Ayton. And I guess until Ayton comes back, I think Robert Williams does hold some value outside of Raph's situation of, a back-to-back where clearly I don't think they're going to push it with him with his injury profile.
Yeah, I think he is a guy that I'm holding on to. And even when Ayton is back, I don't think I'm going to be very quick to drop him. Just because I want to see how the rotation looks as far as how the minutes are distributed between their three centers. Because he's been very good when he's on the floor, and he's a guy that in 15 minutes can get you 6 rebounds, a steal, and 2 blocks, and shoot 5 for 5 from the floor. Like, I think he's, one of the best in the league at providing value in very limited minutes. So yeah, I think he definitely holds value. Obviously, the injury history and the way they've treated him this season is not ideal, but he's too talented to just drop.
Yeah, definitely. It's great to see Robert Williams actually back on the court now at this point. And he's shooting threes. Another permanent guy that just always seems to do really well when given the opportunity if he can stay healthy. But yeah, we got to get to football, man. Back to the gridiron. NFL Week 12 Sunday night. This Sunday, 2 teams battle for playoff positioning when Jalen Hurts and the Eagles fly west for a clash with Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, guys, to close out the show today, let's get into some schedule stuff. Do not, and I repeat, do not pick up any Thunder or Phoenix Suns players because they have no more games the rest of the week. Their week is done. I think also the Miami Heat are in a pretty precarious position because they had their one game on Monday and then they don't play again until Sunday. So anybody that's on the fringes on that team, I think you can pretty much ignore. But Raph, want to get your take on teams that you're targeting for the remainder of week 5 or possibly into week 6, teams and or players.
Yeah. So talked about the Clippers earlier. They've got 3 games the remainder of this week. The situation isn't great without Norman Powell, but if you're going to gamble on anyone, that's one team you'd probably want to consider just because of the schedule. I'd keep an eye on Ayo Dosunmu in Chicago as well. They've got 3 more games the rest of this week. Let's see. Patrick Williams is already out. I don't know if Ayo would move into the starting lineup in that case. They'd be a bit small. With basically Zach LaVine at the 4, but I think he'd play more minutes in this scenario. So I think Ayo Dosunmu in deep leagues would be someone else to really keep an eye on here in terms of fantasy value for the rest of the week.
Yeah, the interesting part about Ayo Dosunmu is that, he's played closing minutes in place of Josh Giddey, and Josh Giddey just has not been that great. Still can't shoot worth a lick, and his defense is highly questionable. a fellow writer for Yahoo Sports today had an article about maybe Josh Giddey might be better at power forward. It's giving me Ben Simmons vibes. I don't know that. I mean, obviously he's better than Ben Simmons, but I just don't know that we necessarily can trust.
I don't know about obviously.
He's Ben Simmons with no defense, and I don't know his exact percentage, but maybe
his numbers are better than Ben Simmons.
He actually shoots. Yeah, agreed. His
He
numbers
shoots
are
better. He's a more willing shooter than Ben Simmons.
Yes,
he's willing to shoot.
Yes,
there we go.
So he's a better version of Ben
Simmons. Is that a positive? I don't know if I want Josh Giddey wanting to shoot if I'm a coach.
Yeah, I mean, but so it begs the question, like maybe he's playing out of position. We want to force him into this point guard like role, and frankly, he can't shoot. And if you're a guard in the league that can't shoot, there's no place for you on the court, and you can't play defense. There's no place for you on the court unless you're like a creative power forward. Which I don't know. This is an interesting test case with Patrick Williams out. Maybe they do slide Giddey to the 4 and then bring Ayo Dosunmu and the 3 and slide Zach LaVine to the 2 or vice versa. But I think it's a good point in Ayo Dosunmu anyway, just because, Pat Williams being out, that's an opportunity. Dosunmu's been playing pretty well, shooting 48% from the field over his last 2 weeks, 92% from the line. He does good things in fantasy. Noah, where do you stand on teams or players that you're picking up for the remainder of this week or in the next?
Yeah, I think, definitely want to once again highlight Ty Jerome, mostly for tonight, but potentially for a few games moving forward. They don't have like a super favorable schedule, but it's not bad. And if these wing guys keep missing games and he's playing 25 minutes per game off the bench, I think he's a productive player. Donovan Clingan, who we already talked about a good bit. They have, I believe, 3 games the rest of this week, including that back-to-back, and then 4 games next week. No back-to-back, so there's no like Robert Williams absence in there, but especially if Ayton, we don't really know when he's back. I think, that's a lot of games as well. And then Obi Toppin, who we already talked about again earlier, was really good in their last game, could be good again tonight. And they have, I believe, 3 games the rest of this week and then 4 more next week as well.
Yeah. I just point to the Indiana Pacers. They're like the Clippers and the Orlando Magic, have 7 games over the next course of week 5 into week 6. So if for whatever reason someone dropped Goga Batadze, pick him up. He's still well under 40% roster. So there are places where he's available. He should not be. Shout out to Franz Wagner, Eastern Conference Player of the Week, just playing ridiculously well. Sans Paolo Banchero. TJ McConnell, definitely another guy that I'm scooping up. I don't know. I feel like this is a pretty streamable week. So I'd say just look at your waiver wires and look at where the opportunities lie. There's definitely going to be some Sunday, Monday back-to-backs that you'll may want to pick up a transaction later in the week. If you didn't use it, you can go into next week and get a couple of plays there. I would probably try to target the teams that have the 3 games left, because this is a pretty streamable week with no day with more than 8 games on the slate. So trying to think if there's anything else we didn't cover. DeJounte Murray's practicing. Still not taking contact, so that's a good thing for him. I think he's approaching his early December return date, which is nice to see. Anything else for you guys?
Isaiah Hartenstein, I believe. Let me double check this. I believe that he is questionable for Thursday.
Whoa, that is a huge development.
Yeah, so with their lack of centers right now, you get him back. Obviously, he's going to be restricted early on just from a conditioning standpoint, but his ability to rebound, rim protect, and play make in that short role, he's going to be a pretty big addition if you've been stashing him in an IO plus spot in your roster.
Dude, that's huge. I mean, and especially because Fantasy Manager just got the gift of Jalen Williams getting center eligibility. And then within later that week, Isaiah Hartenstein comes back. But I mean, he'll probably still play backup center because they just don't have enough bodies yet. But yeah, Thunder coming off a weird loss there. But I think that they're in great shape right now. And to get Isaiah Hartenstein back at this point in the season, only better.
He's definitely questionable. Looking at the 2:30 report right now.
And that's that game's tonight, not tomorrow.
Tonight, yeah.
So yeah.
Wow, that's major. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, even if he doesn't play tonight, I mean, he could be back, as soon as next week. So if you stashed him, this is the week of stashes. Porzingis, good news. Yeah. Hartenstein, good news. So congratulations if you guys were drafting stashers. All right, that'll do it for week 5 Rotoworld Basketball Show. for Dan Titus, Noah Rubin, and Raphielle Johnson. See you next week.